Yes, yes.
Okay. Very good. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Neva. Thank you very much. And it's really wonderful seeing you. Always enthusiastic, always full of energy. So this is what I'll be talking about in a minute. But given the question that you asked me, let me go back in time a little bit. In the year 2001, I got an invitation from three people who were organizing a conference at the University of Alberta, the University of, I think, Wharton, one of the universities in Canada. Yeah, Alberta and another university in Canada were organizing this conference. And their assignment was, given the work you have done in your area, try to apply it to the study of family firms. Up to that point in time, I really had no interest or knowledge of family firms. So I was doing work in internationalization. So I started saying, okay, how would it apply to family firms? What is unique about family firms in terms of the internationalization decision and so on? And then I got invited again and again to a lot of these places. And actually, that was my entree into family firms. But you are right. I started in strategy. I still teach strategy, of course. And that's always my background. From strategy, I looked into the intersection between strategy and entrepreneurship in the study of corporate entrepreneurship, technological, entrepreneurship, and so on. So most of my work has been at that intersection. But the family firm was a spin-off because of the kind of the questions that I kept getting. And as I got more and more involved in conferences and so on, my kind of activities in the domain kind of expanded, but it was never actually planned at all. But I do now get to review a lot of papers for family firms, journals, for specialized journals, for general management journals. And I don't know if this is good for the field or not, but that's what actually inspired my talk today. So as I was looking over a period of time about how the field has come from the year 2001, actually it was like a couple of weeks after September 11 where the conference was held, because I remember going through all of these security checks. I was living in Atlanta, and then oh my God, all of the security checks. There were like 4 or 5 of us on the plane from Atlanta to actually Minnesota, from Minnesota to Canada. A lot of security. But anyway, the field has come a long way. It has improved a lot. It has become broader and broader in terms of scope. A lot of the introduction, a lot of new theories from multiple areas. But still, I think with the growing emphasis on rigor and theory building and so on in the field, I thought there would be some things that we could do better, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So I titled my talk, for the lack of a better term, Persistent Challenges in the Study of Family Firms. I'm sure each one of us can have a list of their own, but these are kind of the issues that I thought that I would like to talk about today. The issue of heterogeneity, I think everybody acknowledges, but still, but we don't always theorize around it in our empirical work. Indigeneity has become a big concern throughout the field, but especially in family firms, there are unique issues that make causal inferences problematic. I'll talk about this. Family firms have the duality of the family and the business, and how you integrate those logic. That has always been a big issue from day one in the study of family firms. But again, that remains a big issue. The unique problems of governance and power distribution and so on in family firms remain paramount, and they need attention. Of course, we now and throughout organizational studies, we're thinking about time and its implications, but family firms, some of them have been around for multiple generations, and the transitions that take place and the temporal activities that take place, again, we need to pay attention to that. And I don't know if you will agree with me or not, even though we incorporate a lot of theories, but there are 2-3 theories that seem to dominate the discussion, and that worries me a little bit. I'll talk about this in a second. Of course, the notion of embeddedness is characteristic of family firms. So let me take each one of these, and what I'm going to do, I'll be probably boringly systematic in the sense that I'll say what the problem is, why does it persist, and what can we do about it very quickly. Okay. in terms of heterogeneity, all of us recognize how family firms are so different in terms of their ownership, in terms of structure, family dynamics, in terms of business goals, family goals, all of these kind of things. Who leads the organization, and also the context in which these families, family firms exist. But of course, there have been a number of special issues on heterogeneity and family firms and a number of papers. But again, that problem doesn't go away because we have a lot of transitions going on, different goals across generations. The institutions that govern the family firm are also within the family, and within the firm and outside the firm are also different, and so on. And of course, we don't know quite a bit about the processes that take place within family firms. And that's not unique to family firms, but it's more acute in family firms. How to address heterogeneity? Of course, that's a big issue. People in strategy, entrepreneurship, management have been talking about this. One of the common approaches people use is to develop typologies of different family firms. Typologies are just way of communicating ideas about differences, but they are not as accurate or as not precise in terms of understanding the heterogeneity. Again, look into the kind of incorporating context into our decisions. And of course, more and more people are using configurational approaches to doing that. But the issue of heterogeneity, I really think is very important because it tells us a great deal about how these companies develop, how they pursue their different strategic goals, and how they deploy their resources, and how they position themselves and transition over a period of time. Related to that is the issue of indigeneity, which has become a big issue throughout the field. Again, a couple of my colleagues are next door to me. They write extensively about this, how indigeneity has made it very difficult for us to assess the validity of our causal claims. So family firms have very unique problems that make indigeneity a big issue, correct? We have many unobserved variables that have to do with ownership and the emotional content of ownership, the psychological content of ownership. Performance might influence how members of the family involved. For example, causality is difficult to ascertain. And of course, the founder attributes might, in fact, confound the empirical relationships. There are many other things, but it is the ownership, the nature of the family, the nature of the relationship, the intimate relationship between the family and the firm that make the causal inferences more and more, complicated. Part of the reason why the indigeneity, even though more and more journals pay attention to it, continue to persist is that we continue to use cross-sectional data. I must admit, more and more papers have multiple databases and longitudinal databases, especially from outside the United States as well as the United States as well. Natural experiments are very difficult in these companies. And of course, family variables tend to change, family variables and family governance tends to change slowly in these companies, which makes indigeneity more endemic than usual. Of course, the solution, of course, is better designs in terms of looking into longitudinal studies, panel databases, quasi-experimental studies, and there are a lot of reviews that tell us about how to address indigeneity. I think more and more people actually, and more papers being submitted to journals are very cognizant of that, but it continues to bug me because, again, the claims are, when people talk about doing all of these indigeneity checks, they don't always they're not derived based on theory or just guided by a principle. It looks more like a convenient way. One of the best ways, of course, to deal with indigeneity is to combine qualitative and quantitative methods, and we have seen some of this in some of the papers. So the graph on the left-hand side is probably one of the most familiar in family business. I saw it when I entered the field in around 2001. There is always the family, the business, the ownership, the overlap in circles, correct? That has been with us for a long period of time. But what it tells us is that there is an intimate relationship between family goals and the business goals. Sometimes they're in concert, sometimes they're in conflict, and they actually very differ. They might be different. Economic goals are different from family goals. The owner might want a legacy, but at the same time, other people wanted immediate short-term distribution of wealth. For example, emotional attachments are very uniquely important in family businesses because, again, a family is heavily involved in the business. Socioeconomic wealth have become a catchphrase almost in the literature because, again, the idea is that you have this tension between the family issues and the financial issues, the economic issues, and the emotional issues. So the integrating those has taken a different shape in the last 10 years or so since the socioeconomic approach came about. Everybody kind of seems to use that as the framework. And there have been a number of excellent reviews of why this approach seems to work. But there have been also a number of critiques of that approach because there is tension about where the balance between socio and economic happens and under what conditions and so on. So the idea about why it persists, because we don't always know what the family goals are, right? And they are hard to quantify and measure. They might be qualitative in nature. They might change over a period of time. The psychodramas that develop with family transitions and family decision making also make it very difficult for us. The theories that we already have, except maybe the ones that we borrow from psychology and from the socioeconomic wealth, don't always integrate, the family emotional part of it. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, we don't know as much about processes. So how do you integrate that? I think we're seeing more and more interest in the behavioral side of decision making, looking into the micro foundations of decision making, looking into the governance decision processes and how they unfold over a period of time. And they're almost never easy because, again, there are power distribution, there is money involved, there are egos involved, and all of these things. So again, more and more of that integration of the socio into the economics, I think, will help us a lot and greater attention to the process. Related to this, the graph on the left-hand side, if you can see it, is kind of one of my, I put it there because it just tells you how complicated governance in family firms could be, at least in this conception. A lot of variables come to bear, and the decisions are never easy because family is involved, egos involved, as I mentioned. Again, the problem with here is not only about money, it's also about ego, about who, and also who has authority, who has power, and among members of the family firms, who wants to be involved and who does not, who's included and who is not. So all of these informal relationships actually come to bear in the decisions of in terms of governance and all of these things. And of course, we have a lot of literature that tells us about the governance of family firms and how they change over generations. And that literature is very informative because we know from that literature is that there are significant changes that take place with the transitions. And some of these can create upheaval in terms of the life of the family firm, and that actually might be very problematic. So this complex web of relationships, the power dynamics, the dramas that unfold, persist because, again, the informal goals versus the formal goals. Who has the power and who doesn't? How do you share? How you decide who follows the founder, for example, relationships in the family firms, and who wants to be included and who does not, and who should be excluded, and how to exclude them. All of these things are really complicate things quite a bit. And of course, add to that the institutional setting in which all of these, the laws and regulations and all of these things can complicate things. Again, there is a lot that has been already written on governance, but again, the informal part of the governance and governance mechanism, and that, as I mentioned, very much like processes, That's probably one of the least understood, at least the way I see it. The distribution of power between coalitions that develop over a period of time, and when there is fracturing within the family, and how this affects the transitions that the organization go through. The stewardship theory has been offered as a kind of an alternative to agency, because some people argue that even in family firms, agency issues, prevail. So stewardship was provided as an alternative. People are caring, they worry about the resources, they worry about the next generation, they sacrifice themselves, and so on. So how do you integrate those two and trying to come up with a more reasonable explanation of the family dynamics and how they affect governance? Time is really, really important. Some of the family firms that we study, especially outside the United States, have been around for many generations. Sorry. Of course, many family firms, not all of them, emphasize long-term survival, and their decisions are taken as such, and that's one of the key things about the assumptions that pervade the literature.
Shaker, we lost you.
The concern about sorry?
It's okay. We lost you for a second, but now we hear you.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay. Should I start? I was about to say, when I was thinking about time and the generational dynamics in family firms. One of the generational dynamics have been one of the areas that have been subject to a lot of scrutiny and study. But because part of it is one of the things that makes family firms unique is their emphasis on long term, the emphasis on legacy, which focuses their resource allocations, decision making, strategic making, and so on. And we know from the literature is that the way these families make investments in long term and in terms of capital expenditures and expansion decisions and so on, they're a lot more measured in a way than some other companies because of that, because they're concerned about keeping the legacy for their family members for the next generations. Again, we really don't think about the effect of time and how time means learning within members of the family, and what it means in terms of the sharing of that learning over a period of time, how the goals change over a period of time with the change of different generations. And the tensions that can arise among members of the family, dominant family members who are involved in the business, especially about their time horizons, about their strategic priorities, and so on. Part of this, again, we are not, privileged to see how these decisions are made and how these issues are made. And if there are conflicts, many families try to keep those in private, obviously, and that makes it even more difficult. Okay. So time becomes an element of the story. Studying events like transitional events, departures of family members, entry of non-family members, generational shifts, and how they affect strategic decisions. I think we need to know a little bit more about this. And again, longitudinal studies can help us a great deal in terms of this. This probably is one of the things I had a great deal of difficulty thinking about. Even though I know there are a lot of theories being used, I know that learning theory has been used, social capital stuff has been used, different theories about this and that have been used. Most of the studies kind of focus on agency theory, occasionally socioeconomic wealth. If I were Lou Gomez Mejia, I would be really happy because everybody invokes my framework, whether it's appropriate or not. So these are really why, but the issues that we're talking about are bigger than those two perspectives. I think more and more theoretical perspectives. One of the things I remember about the early work that was done in family firms, like Michael Lobotkin, who used to be a great friend of Israel, he used to spend every summer there. Anyway, one of the things when we used to talk about this, we all came from strategy, but he was more and more involved in family first. He said, what we need to think about is what is unique about theory building in family firms, what makes theory different within the family firms. And I think some of that is being done, but I think that we still rely heavily on a few of these theories. Again, I'm not complaining about the agency theory. It is appropriate, correct, and in fact, Michael Lubetkin and Schultz started their work using agency theory. But I think, again, it has become so convenient for us to think about taking an existing theory and applying to family firm rather than coming up with new constructs, new ideas, might be even theory about what makes these companies particularly unique. Again, a part of it is the integration, looking into new constructs, understanding the setting, understanding the dynamics that we all talk about. Contextual embeddedness. Contextual embeddedness is family firms, and that's not only unique to family firms, but family firms are embedded in social institutions. The cultural norms shape their governance structures. I already talked about this. The family dynamics also play an important role. It's this interaction between family dynamics and the institutional environment that affects a lot of the decisions. Ownership structures play an important role. So again, there are significant differences within and across countries, and I think we need to think about this a lot more than we have done. And we see some of this in the journals, but not, to be honest with you, not as well developed as it could be. Why? Because again, most of the theories that we use are still, predominantly Western, and we see more and more submissions for China and some other countries, but China in particular, in every field now, there are more and more submissions. But even there, they automatically apply. I was in China for a month. Everywhere I go there, they love the socioeconomic wealth. I think Lou Gomez-Bahia should move to China because I think he's one of the most famous people there. But everybody, they take the theories that probably because they mimic what the journals are doing. The journals here publish this, and they're trying to get into UTD list. That's their big goal now. And they use the same kind of things rather than thinking about what's unique about the Chinese family context and how it might give us new ideas, new constructs, new things that we can think about. The same with Latin American family firms, same about family firms in the MENA region that have long history of having family firms. Okay, so again, part of this is just my desire to look into a broader set of countries, a broader set of contexts, kind of asking people to, instead of conveniently take the existing theory and say, here it is, maybe we need to reflect a little bit more and say, okay, what is unique about this? What's unique about this type, the family firms that I'm studying in Estonia, for example? It's a catch-22 in a way, because if you do that, then you get some reviewers who said, I don't know much about Estonian family firms, but it's part of the process, correct? You need to educate people about what's unique about these firms and why we need new ways of thinking and theorizing about this. Okay, so this is my concluding statement. Family firms have, it's a great area in terms of work, doing research, offer unique laboratories for theory development. I think we should embrace the heterogeneity in terms of their ownership, their governance, their emotional dynamics, the socio-dramas that unfold, and the context. And I think we need to think about the causal inferences a lot more, because we are trying to accumulate more and more findings. And there have been some special issues talking about this. I think that will help us kind of have more confidence in what we know, and then say this is why it matters. Of course, applying qualitative and quantitative, or combining qualitative and qualitative methods is always a great idea in terms of validation, in terms of enhancing credibility and bringing new rich insights. But looking into the context is really one of the key ways to move forward. thank you for listening to me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, now I can see you.
I got in front of the camera. I don't know how that happened.
I know that they wanted to make sure that I see you. Thank you. Good to see you.
It is good to see you. It's good to see you, but I'm going to turn the camera the other way.
No, that's thank you. I appreciate that.
for your benefit.
Yes, I understand.
Question?
So the list questions you have.
Yeah.
The sooner you're going to leave, so remember that. Okay, please. Yes.
You said you got into it from those conferences. Were those ones that Jim Crispin set up?
Exactly. University of Calgary, when he was at University of Calgary, and University of Alberta and Wharton. That was the first conference. Danny Miller, myself, Michael Head, and Ian McMillan, and a couple of others were asked to say, from our perspectives, you're doing this work in your area, what would you do? Yes. How would you apply it to family? That's exactly the beginning. So I attended the first 2 or 3 of those conferences, yes.
Oh, he had a bunch of them, yeah, because he pulled me in several years later.
Yes. From there, they actually did and that's probably part of the history of the field. So the initial conference, they did a special issue of Journal of Business Venturing because Ian McMillan was still, connected to that. And then they had this deal where they did the annual special issue of ATP, Entrepreneurship Theory and Practice, and a lot of new people came in over time. I don't know if it's still going on or not, but it continued for multiple years for sure. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that you were not with us the whole day, but in a way, we touched.
Can't get out of this thing.
What?
Can't get out. There we go.
We touched some parts of your presentation, which I totally agree with. Like, sure, this is like inspiration of what we should do. So Ruth talked about context. So looking into different cultural context, and Jim talked about configurations of families that influence then different, like trying to explain the heterogeneity of family businesses, and also like we talked before also in our conversations that first generation family firms like founder firms are different than later generation firms. Really like mentioning, my paper was the kind of looking into SEW that it is too narrow as a theory and that we need to, if we have it, we need to do a better work, and like how it evolves over time was my main concern, because it should explain how family businesses evolve and change over time, and so in different ways our presentations today touched upon points that you mentioned. So
thank you. Well, I assumed that's why I did not get into a lot of detail. So I assumed that they did. So, but that's in a way, this is great, but in a way, it reiterates something I was trying to say. Whenever you go to a family business conference, it's almost the same issues. So that's kind of, again, so the question becomes, what's new here? I am sure each one of the speakers brought a different perspective to the conversation, but the same kind of themes, kind of very different from early on. From maybe I'm becoming nostalgic. I'm never nostalgic about those kind of things, but because we did not know what the territory was all about, what is in and what's out, correct? So each one of us brought their biases into that, and they were good biases in the sense I know this area and it could be useful in the study of family firms. So the notion of familyness was one of the presentations in the first conference. That was really at the time, for a time before the socioeconomic wealth kind of became a big issue. How do you measure the familyness? And how does the concept of families, for example, changes over a period of time? Going back to your comment about socioeconomic wealth, because if the dominant coalition or the leadership of the family firm or different generations espouse different goals, it stands to reason to assume that socioeconomic whatever balance will change with time, correct? But do we know that for sure? By how much? And how much divergence would keep the family together, for example, or fracture the family? Is the family sticking together a good thing? Is really balancing those two a good thing over a period of time? Sometimes we know from strategy, my early work and work by many others, is that strategic divergence can also create momentum for significant change. So sometimes tension within the top management team is a good thing. I remember Kathy Eisenhardt's early work. How can top management teams have a good fight? The fight is to talk about priorities, different goals, and so on. And there are winners or losers. Some people leave, correct, because they don't like the strategic direction of the company. And they could be the right ones. But so the question becomes, how do you affect that in a family while keeping the family together? And you know what I mean? And that's a big challenge. Yeah.
We call it managing the risks of success.
Yes. Yeah.
Basically, success has some illnesses that we know in advance that if we can avoid if we deal with them in time. If we don't deal with them in time, they'll kill us. All the business.
I agree. I understand. I appreciate that. Yeah. But again, there is a cost to that, and which is implied in your comment very much. Yeah.
Shaker, thank you very much. I think that you are such a nice person. So you were very constructive in your overview and criticism. It was really constructive, right? And I think it's a wonderful contribution that even though you're far away, that we end the day with this inspiration of what we should do, right? So really, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will have a new theory paper, so now I know I can send it to you.
Yeah.
For a friendly review.
No. Jim is a much nicer and much more constructive editor. I worked with him. I know he's one of the most constructive people I've ever known. I'm sure Ruth too. So
Thank you.
not only.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Good seeing everyone.
Thanks, Doc. It's good to see you.
Bye.
So it's the end of our day, and just I have
you have to hit the button.
I didn't like
No.
and for all.